Welcome to the Winning with Shopify podcast. This is the podcast to help you scale your Shopify store into a money-making machine. How many of you are making data-driven decisions on Shopify? Today's partner, Cinder, can relieve you from manual data entry and automatically generate an accurate P&L report, balance sheets, and inventory management for your business needs. Use coupon code EasyBooks for up to 40% off from the start. And check out the Cinder Actionable Business Checklist for your success in the podcast description. Your host is Nick Truman. He's a Shopify expert and the CEO of JustAskParker.com, a global specialist marketing agency for Shopify owners. Nick will be sharing his knowledge and interviewing the experts to help you thrive and build a business that makes you money. For exclusive offers, bonus content, and weekly episode reminders, join our mailing list at winningwithshopify.com. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Here's your host, Nick Truman.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Winning with Shopify podcast. If it is your first time on the podcast, welcome. It's such an honor and a pleasure to have you listening in today. Do check out our website, winningwithshopify.com. There's a few good resources on there, and you can also submit some feedback or some questions. If you have been tuning in for a while, welcome back. It's great to have you with us. And I love looking at some of the numbers and seeing how many of you guys are engaging every single week. Talking to a few different people over the last week who tune into the podcast, it's been amazing to hear some of the feedback. And something in particular I just wanted to highlight this morning, it's morning where we are at the moment, but something I wanted to highlight quickly this morning was some of the episodes. Some people have said that they tune in and think, oh, I don't know if I'm going to like this, or we'll give it a go anyway. But actually, you always find fruit in that episode. There's always something useful in it, which is a really powerful thing, I think. I've probably learned more over the years from things that have actually been unassociated with my direct day job. And that's where I think there can be some really good cross-learnings throughout. So we're going to keep plugging with a lot of different topics as we go further into 2022. And last thing to flag before we come on to today's episode is, if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and leave us a review on whatever platform you're listening to this podcast on. It really helps us out. Without further ado then, let's get on to today's topic. So today, I am fulfilling a promise that I made on the podcast. We promised we were going to get Gorgias back on the show, and today that is exactly what we are doing. We're delighted to have them back to be talking specifically about social media, as mentioned with Louis from Gorgias last time, although we don't have Louis on the show today, and I'll introduce our guest in a second. But today we're going to be talking about great customer service through social media channels. It's not an obvious channel you might think of to think, okay, customer service and customer experience, or dealing with somebody's returns, for example. But all of that is yet to be revealed on today's episode. Today, we've got Tyler on the show, who's partner manager at Gorgias. So Tyler, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Nick, for having me. Happy to be here.
Great stuff. Well, it's great to have you on the show. And as we do with all of our guests, give us a little introduction to yourself. And for anyone that missed the last episode, tell us a bit about Gorgias.
Absolutely. I'd be glad to. So my name is Tyler Davider. I'm a partner manager here at Gorgias, similar to Louis, if you did hear the last episode. A little background on me. I've spent majority of my career in tech, most of that being specifically within the e-commerce space. So I've got pretty extensive background in like working in Magento platforms and Shopify, obviously. Beyond that, once everybody made that switch. And now my focus here at Gorgias is working with marketing agencies specifically to help them implement Gorgias for their clients that would be a good fit for it.
Lovely. And just before we dive in, I've got to ask now, Magento versus Shopify, give us your opinion.
It's kind of a no-brainer depending on where you're at. My experience in working with Magento is a little bit old school, specifically because I was working in Magento 1 before they kind of fully revamped and jumped into Magento 2. But now it's kind of the obvious trend is like everybody's jumping over to Shopify just because it's so much easier to make the changes and modifications that you need on like a modular level, right? Whether that's revamping the site or just adding some integrations, like Shopify is kind of a no-brainer, kind of regardless of whatever size your D2C store is.
Yeah, definitely. I couldn't agree more. I think some of the clients who've moved from like Hybris, for example, which is Magento plus like another 50-fold in terms of functionality, cost and complication. Just seeing people move across to Shopify and having that ease of just new page. Let's go for 3 columns. Let's put some icons in, a little heading, and you can just build pages so quickly. And you mentioned, the modular approach, so much better. Equally, it's not for everybody though, is it? There are certain things you can't do on Shopify that something like Magento is absolutely required for.
I mean, certainly. And that's, my background in working with Magento is more on like a wider scale website dev as a platform. So like essentially that was how they were using it as well, is they were having templates within Magento that just made it really easy to roll out updates to like multiple sites all at once. Versus Shopify, which is, definitely more modular on the individual level. But if you are going to be rolling out and managing, hundreds, if not thousands of websites, like sure, Magento definitely could be a good fit and use case for that situation. But definitely on a personal level of just working within the platforms, like big relief for me to be spending more of my time in Shopify pages nowadays rather than Magento. It can get a little bit in the weeds there.
Awesome. Well, let's move on. We're not talking about Magento Shopify today, although that could be quite a good episode that we could do in the future, I think, because I think certainly a platform comparison, because I know a lot of people have just looked at platforms and gone, Shopify is the obvious one. They're basically the Amazon of the CMS world now, which is not technically true, but they are on their way. But yeah, I think certainly there are other options, or the more customization you need, the more a plug and play platform is not really going to work for your business. So cool. Well, let's talk about customer service and social media then. So a quick question just to kick things off. What is a 101 of this? Like what are we actually talking about today? What is social media even part of customer experience or customer service, more importantly?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, definitely there's no doubt about it that when you're running a big brand or a small brand, like you have to have socials and you have to be engaging with the people that are engaging with your socials. And it really breaks down into, I want to say, two separate groups of customer interaction, right? And there's customer service being one of those, absolutely, where it's pretty straightforward, right? Somebody comes to you with a question or a problem and you respond, you essentially close that ticket within your social media channels. But there's another aspect of it, which, I like to call customer care.
Okay.
Really about like proactively meeting those customers' needs in terms of being on socials. So having a help center, allowing them to kind of do things themselves, providing like a self-service option for them, education, interaction, just like responding, liking comments. When people leave a little heart emoji, like leave a heart emoji back, little things like that really ties into, how you can just effectively build a community on these platforms and get people to keep coming back and feel like they're talking to a real person when they reach out to your brand.
I'm going to take us on a second tangent, and I know we've only been recording now for 6 minutes. Let's go on a second tangent.
Sure.
Help center. I mean, as someone who's got a background in SEO, a help center is absolute gold dust, obviously, for content. Talk us through, like, how does a help center work? Like, what does it look like, and what can it actually achieve for you on customer service?
I mean, I think the ultimate goal that, a lot of business owners look to like a help center for is reduction of tickets, essentially, right? They get a lot of tickets that are like, where's my order? Like, what do I do if XYZ piece breaks or I need to issue a refund? So rather than having all of these customers reach out on an individual basis on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and, sending you emails, like, providing an option that allows them to just go in and see for themselves in, somewhat of like a FAQ page, or, even beyond that, like a full service help center, which is also included when you use Gorgias. That's really a factor involved in just making sure that the customer is as taken care of as possible. And when they don't want to talk to a person or they don't need to talk to a person, it's just like a small question, they're able to find that answer to their question just very quickly in a short amount of time.
Nice. And I love the fact that it's, as you say, if you don't have any free time, or actually if phone support is the only customer support this company offers, or email you could be waiting for days, weeks, months as far as the customer expectation is concerned. And also with phone, you've got to call up, and by the time you've even got through to somebody, you could have finished your entire journey and found the answer yourself in the help center. And the bit I mentioned as well about content is, if you've got lots of content about your products, Google's going to want to rank you higher. So if you've got this whole help center of how to install my sofa, how to put it together, how long does the warranty last, what do I do if it turns up and I don't like it? Having all of these different help center topics is all big content about your type of sofa, which is all good for, again, pushing those keywords up the face of Google. But the help center can also assist with customer service, can't it? Because if you've got that content there and someone says, I can't find my order, I need to do a return, or how do I get a refund? customer service, instead of reading it and computing it in their minds and writing a response, and you could just have a predefined response, couldn't you? Just to say, oh, here's our, this is how to send a return, and just ping them the link or copy and paste the content from the help center.
Exactly. Yeah. And I love the way that you're thinking about a help center as well, just because you have, such an extensive background in SEO. And that's definitely my background as well. Before working at Gorgias, like a help center and all these FAQ pages, like it was just a way to boost your ranking essentially. And SEO is such a deep topic in itself. I would like to stay out of the weeds if possible there, just so, I don't make myself look dumb. But, from a service perspective, like that's where the help center that we're offering and that we're looking at really just helps the most, because when customers are reaching out, and like you said, even when people do reach out with questions that are accessible on the help center, that's where you can be leveraging a tool like Gorgias to automate some of those responses out. So if somebody reaches out asking, hey, I would like to make a return. Great. Here's our return process and page within our help center. You send a link. Our software, Gorgias, can actually analyze the messages that are coming in and potentially close that ticket, send out the link to resolve their problem without an agent even touching it. So from a customer service perspective, I think there's no amount of understating that can be done with having a help center, just because it's going to make the whole process overall, from customer reaching out on any channels or finding it themselves, just so much more efficient.
Definitely. And I love that example as well of somebody asking a question on social media and your tool automatically going, oh, here's the answer, and closing the ticket, and everybody moves on with their lives. And it's all done very quickly and very efficiently. Not to mention, it's also a good link for SEO. But we'll stay out of the SEO chat for today. But yeah, I think it's just so efficient, isn't it? And I think customers just want the information quickly, especially, if we talk a little bit about the emotional side of customers. If you're trying to return something, or if you're reaching out to a brand for help, 9 times out of 10, it's because there's a negative in place, isn't there? So actually, if you are slow to reply, or you don't reply with the right kind of content or answer their question quickly and efficiently, you're going to just be adding so quickly to that customer's problem, almost like they're hanging on a cliff edge and you want to get them off the cliff as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I mean, it couldn't have been said better. Exactly. And the problem with slow response times in any of these channels as well results ultimately in more tickets being opened by that customer, right? Because if a customer reaches out via email and doesn't get a response, then boom, all of a sudden they're calling you, and then boom, all of a sudden they're flaming you on Twitter, and then they're DMing you on Instagram, and all of a sudden you've got all these tickets and all these channels opened up from one customer with one issue versus the original solution, which would be a lot more effective in terms of taking care of the customer and just really representing the brand well, of resolving it on that first get-go in a timely manner. So that way 24 hours go by after sending their initial inquiry, they're not blowing you up again, and then also adding fuel to the fire for them, saying, hey, this product doesn't work. I reached out 2 days ago, and the day after that, haven't got a response. Like, it really could be resolved essentially at that get-go, right? Within an hour or two, to respond to the customer, take care of them, make sure that they feel, appreciated and valued, and really just resolving whatever problem they have, whether that's, return, or they're just maybe have a usability question with your product. Like, hey, I'm not quite sure how to do this, or did I set something up wrong? We just want to make sure that, we're helping them out in a timely manner. And beyond that, to add to the subject of, the help center, it's not necessarily that we just need to, send a link to the help center, right? Oh, here's a link to the answer of your question. Having a centralized documentation like that can absolutely tie in a ton of value when, you are looking at responding on specific social channels. So if I do want to respond in Instagram comments, right, rather than posting a link there and then making people, copy and paste the link, because sometimes they're not always clickable on your phone and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
We can just take, a relevant excerpt from the help center article, post that into a response, or like I said, even automate that out by creating specific snippets and excerpts that will respond to those tickets essentially automatically.
Okay, so many things I could pick up on there. So I'm going to restrict it to just one or two. I think one thing's really key, and it's, we used to talk a lot in the industry years ago about what we used to call customer first. And it was just, you could put that in front of anything: customer first marketing, customer first delivery times, whatever you want. But what you've just mentioned about the mobile phone and not being able to click on that link easily, or then your phone says, are you sure you want to open a link from an email? And so it's just another step, and it just, again, it adds to this ever increasing frustration in the customer. So the customer first response is to meet the customer wherever they are. And in this world, it's on whatever technology they're on. And we know from looking at the data how many people shop on mobile and operate on mobile and check personal emails during the working day on mobile. You see where this is going. I think having it being user friendly and easy to get to is just so important, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And just to add to that point of, customer first, like I love that. And, when I was working retail jobs in college, there's always this expression of the customer is always right. Right. And both of these expressions, customer first
Yeah.
and the customer is always right, doesn't always necessarily mean that like you have to, bend to every will and need of the customer. It's not like everybody tweeting at your brand on Twitter, like, hey, I want free product, needs or deserves free product. That's not at all what I'm saying. But the customer first and the customer is always right in the sense of responding on all of these channels within social media, I think just is more of an indicator that the customer is right in expecting a response in a timely manner. And there's been some good data and studies on that a lot of people who do shop online and do use social media do just expect brands to be responsive on all of those channels. So it's so important to make sure that we are providing that type of community experience where if somebody does reach out anywhere here, we are putting them first and we are making them feel cared for, and we're doing it in a way that is beyond automated, personalized. Right, we're responding using their name, we're responding referencing the product that they've bought and maybe the date that they've bought it, things like that, so that way they know like, oh, I am talking to a real person whether or not they are.
I think there's so much more opportunity than there's ever been, isn't there? In terms of, you mentioned about automation as well, which we will come on to shortly. But there's so many opportunities to A, do it right, and B, do it really wrong. So I think we've got to be really clear as to which way your business is going to do it. The second thing I want to pick up on from what you were just talking about is if you don't respond to it quickly, and this is where social media plays such a pivotal role and can be, again, so dangerous or so effective for your business, is if you don't respond to it quickly, you start creating, as you say, multiple, I mean, you guys call them tickets, multiple tickets where they're now, they've complained on Instagram and heard nothing. And then they've seen that you've replied to somebody on Twitter. So now they're complaining on Twitter. Now you've got two very, very public complaints or problems to deal with. And you could have fixed it with just the first one.
Exactly. And that's really the way that, it should be is solving it on that first initial interaction, because now you've got a situation where somebody's reaching out on multiple channels just because they're not sure where the brand is going to be the most responsive and they need help and they feel like their problem is, so immediate that it needs to be resolved quickly. Now we've got, effectively, like if I'm working in a platform like Gorgias, 3 different tickets, potentially with 3 different usernames that are not all associated with the email in which they place the order. And now tracking all that down and having, potentially, if I'm a big brand, like multiple agents responding to different tickets in different fashions, like that opens up a whole slew of other problems, right? Where now we've got a situation where the customer says, well, this other agent told me XYZ. And yeah, I mean, I think really consolidating it down to, the speed is not necessarily going to take away from, your efficiency in other places. Like if you are prioritizing responding off of that first interaction, like it's going to overall just give the brand a lot more credibility when it comes to making a customer feel like, hey, this is a legit brand that does care about me and will solve my problem. And hey, even if I am getting a return and the brand reaches out in a quick, timely manner and they resolve my problem, I'm very likely to, potentially shop there again, especially if it's something like, clothing or makeup. Like absolutely, if they take care of me and they return the shirt quickly and there's no problems and they make me feel appreciated, like I'm probably going to buy something else. Maybe I just didn't like the shirt. Maybe it was the wrong size. Like great opportunity to boost retention. And one of our firms, actually, that we were working with had shown like significant data to substantiate that customer loyalty improved 33% when there was that level of engagement on all channels with customer service related, issues and concerns.
Wow. And I think it just goes to show, doesn't it, that as I said earlier, it's so easy to break customer trust and it's not the easiest thing to gain it. It's simple to gain, I would say, but it's just not easy in practice in terms of getting all those different points correct. I spoke to a brand years ago that they had this sort of how many problems reached one of the directors, and they literally kept it as like a score chart, and it wasn't to hold any of their staff accountable. It's just that was an indicator for them in the early days of how many big problems do we have? How often does somebody very, very senior, we've all had it on live chat where it's like, oh, let me get my supervisor. And you're like, great, we're through to someone who can actually do something. And you feel like you're in the power seat.
Exactly.
Wouldn't be required if somebody just said, oh yeah, you signed up to our contract, you got a 14-day grace period, you're still within it, I'll get that cancelled now for you. And it's like, well, jobs are good. That service wasn't for me, but I'm not going to speak ill of them. They cancelled everything absolutely fine, and we all moved on with our lives. It was nice and easy, and I did it on a platform that was right for me, whether that's social media or it's through live chat or even on the phone or in some scenarios face to face. I think it's important to get this right.
Exactly. Yeah. The channel being the most comfortable for you is, I think it ties back into that point of, customer first and customer is always right. Like the customer is going to reach out where they're most comfortable. Right. And so whether that's going to be like, oh, I actually know the person who runs this brand, I'm going to reach out to the founder of the brand themselves, or I follow them on Twitter, so I'm going to reach out on Twitter. Like maybe they don't care enough to go to the website and use the chat feature or use the email feature to send in a message to support, but they are comfortable reaching out on Twitter and some tweeting the brand or directly adding them essentially when they do have an issue or just a general question. Like wherever they are most comfortable is where we want to take care of them, because they're going to be most comfortable there with a response rather than the experience that you've probably seen, like, oh, we're reaching out on Twitter. Can you send us an email here? Like, why do I need to send an email there? I'm on Twitter now. You're on Twitter now responding. Like, just resolve the question here rather than having me sort through my email. And I'm sure, a lot of people out there are the same. Like their email is just jam packed with a bunch of spam and, stuff can easily get lost there. So if it's easiest for them to manage their inquiries and questions and problems towards a brand on any one of these social media channels, like we just want to make sure we're taking care of that on those specific platforms.
Yeah, it's a very, very good point you make as well of the, just almost bringing back brutal memories in my mind of when you're sitting on Twitter and you're DMing a company to say like, is my flight cancelled? I can't work it out or anything. The fact that they're like, well, why don't you email our flight department? It's like, no, I'm in the airport right now. Like you're talking to me, just answer the flipping question. Like, let's just get on with this. Why can't you just log into the system and tell me? I think it's so valid. So let me ask a really big question then. This is going to be quite a big topic, I think, to chat about. Do you think that brands are using social media effectively in terms of customer service and engaging with customers? Or do you think they're missing a trick? Or do you think generally brands are doing it pretty well? They're just not quite scratching the entire itch?
I think generally brands understand the value of, social media channels and interacting with customers, but I think too many of them are thinking about it from a sense of, growth and revenue. Like I'm just going to use Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok to grow my revenue and to make more sales, which, I mean, definitely it's a great channel for all of those things. But when it comes to actually building a community, and I was talking to, maybe you're familiar, he's like a serial entrepreneur out here, Jason Wong, about specifically this topic of like, do you know cool. Jason? Oh, awesome. So this topic of like building a community, and it's not fully related to just shoving every new product and update down their throats in the form of posts. It really has to do a lot with just engaging with people. And I bring up that point of like, somebody leaves a heart emoji on your post on Instagram when you do have a new product that comes out, and you respond like, hey, glad you like it, DM me for a coupon code or something like that. Like that experience is just so much better for the end consumer than just paid advertisements kind of all the time running at their faces. Like if we are able to build up community, we are able to create a natural following and then guide them to a place where they can engage with other members of the community. I think that's really like the end goal that we're looking for. And something that, Jason had done really well with some of his brands is like he would get some of his most active followers and, people that are endorsing his brand essentially for him and got them into like a private invite only Discord, where that's where they're able to test new product. And that's where they're able to talk to each other about like what's going well, what they liked, what they didn't like. And it's in a very segmented location at that point where we've identified the champions of our brand that are external in a customer sense, and now we're able to utilize them for product research and knowledge and insights about, hey, are we doing this well? And that's where a place you can kind of directly ask your customers is like, hey, do you guys think we are doing enough to respond, to engage, to be active on these channels? And so in full, I think To summarize, like I don't think brands are doing nearly enough to engage on that level and identify how to engage. I think some are doing a great job, and I think like one great example would be like Wendy's, right? Like, Wendy's Twitter is fire. They are always putting out content. They are, roasting people in the chat and things like that. And I don't think every brand needs to go to that level, but identifying like what your tone and what your voice is going to be across all of these channels and making it uniform. So that way the brand has a personality is just so valuable in building up that retention and that following that is, almost cult-like when you have that key champion group of customers that just love your product. They love interacting with the brand on social channels. Like that's if we can get to that level and that tier and that degree where, everybody that's following is a champion of the brand and is very excited about everything that you guys are doing and commenting and getting responses, like that's the gold standard of where brands should be at. And I don't think, a lot of brands are there right now.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think there's definitely room to do more. And some of it, as we said already, could be so simple as just responding to customers. I mentioned before we hit record that whenever we get asked by sort of newer startup Shopify stores, and I know a lot of you guys listening right now are in that place, just based on talking to a lot of you and running this for a while. Like, so many of you are like, look, I'm still running my day job. The Shopify thing's a side project. And so my next question is going to be specifically for you guys, I think. But just to make the point that it's difficult to then respond to like every single comment. But in the early days, you've got to. It's part of that just hard graft. There's lots of analogies and phrases people have used over the years of just pushing through that first barrier. But this is part of it. You can learn so much from your customers by talking to them on social. So the question for them really is, okay, Tyler, this sounds amazing. Like if I had all the time in the world and all the money in the world, I'd sit there talking to my customers a lot and sorting all of this sort of stuff out. There are ways to do it without it being super draining. Plus, and this is sort of part two of the question as well, is there can be commercial gains from this. So in terms of finding investment, there are ways to make this play into your hand as the store owner, as the business, so that actually it's not a drain on resources to manage customer support. Actually, the customer support is driving revenue on its own, and you can set your own KPI target to it. What are your thoughts? Like, is that achievable? Is that real? Is there a way to do this without it becoming super cost effective? I know you're about to tell us about Gorgias, but is there a way that this can be achieved without it, costing the earth?
I mean, absolutely. So I think, to talk more to these smaller brands that are maybe just getting started on like a Shopify platform and maybe they don't have much of a following on, Instagram and Twitter and TikTok, all the big ones that, have impacts on their revenue. Like, I think there's small things that we could do that just don't directly involve like the founder of the brand logging into their smartphone and then responding to all these inquiries and reacting to all these comments and anytime they get engagements. Like, I don't think that's sustainable or scalable, but I think in an early sense, like, there's just a checklist of items that we can do to help get us off the ground, right? So like, step one is obviously just fully update all of your relevant social media profiles. Make sure that everything is consistent so that we have congruency of the brand across all of these channels. And then step number two, once you've done that, like that's just kind of initial setup, is to set some smart goals as to what you want to do. And goals could be in the sense of content planning and in scheduling, right? I want to have X number of posts on Instagram a day. I want to tweet this many times a week. I want to get to this many followers by this time of the year. Those are all really relevant questions to ask yourself, is like, what is the purpose of these social media channels and what goals do I want to have to reach them? And then once we've got those goals, then we're at the next step, which is, really building it up. Identify and connect with your audience that is the most relevant to your product, right? Use the brand logo and name to promote it all over the places that you can. Make it so that your friends are also boosting the brand and posting on their channels to really raise awareness. And then once we do get to that certain scale and we're starting to hit some of those milestones and those goals, there's going to be a point where it does become, to your point, like somewhat unmanageable and unrealistic for one person to go in there on their smartphone and manage all of these interactions within their social media channels. So at that point, once you're at that scale, maybe you've hit some of your goals and you're really reaching a point where, okay, now I'm starting to make some money as a brand and like this is going really well. I want to scale it and I want to make it so that this is super effective down the line as we grow and continue to grow. That's where you should look at automating some of this stuff out. Now, beyond the tool like Gorgias, which absolutely can do, pretty much everything that I'm describing here of like analyzing messages, comments, inquiries as they come in, respond automatically, and also, assign rapidly to agents to get things that need a little bit more of a custom touch. There are like internal moderation tools that, you could use as well. I think within Instagram, you can filter out certain keywords. So if maybe you have a controversial product and people are leaving a bunch of negative comments and it's becoming tough to moderate, like you can block certain words and terms from appearing in your comments. And effectively, you can do that, pretty well on like all channels right now. And then once you are ready for it and you're like, okay, this is becoming a lot to manage, and now we're getting positive inquiries, they're getting things that we need to react to build that community. Boom, that's where you should really look at using a tool like Gorgias that brings all of your social channels into one place. So that way you can view every timeline and history of every single customer and every single interaction that's coming in through these channels, to like messages, to respond to messages, to offer discount codes, to potentially reach out and DM people like directly. Like all of that can be done through one platform, Gorgias essentially, that just doesn't require any one person to handle this themselves, and to have, like I said, the founder reaching out on all of these platforms and managing all of these incoming tickets and support inquiries. Like I said, like that's really not scalable. And so once you are at that point where it's like, hey, I don't know how long I can keep this up, and I don't know how sustainable this is, that I'm actually personally going through and responding and reacting, like that's where Gorgias absolutely comes into play, and you should be looking at using a tool like Gorgias to achieve those.
I think it's brilliant, and we use Gorgias ourselves, just to be totally transparent, which is one of the reasons we got in touch initially. I think it was 3 or 4 years ago before my involvement. Our original founder got in touch and said to you guys, do you want to come on the podcast, and can we start using the platform sort of thing and get a demo of it? And it is really useful. We've connected it with stuff that we don't think we would have connected it with at all. Like, for example, we're an official Shopify expert. We get inquiries through the Shopify portal of people looking for our services, and we can talk back to customers through the portal, but via Gorgias. We don't have to log into Shopify or any of our social channels. And I think it is really useful, but actually I think something's really, really key. Again, going back to the small, sort of more startup shops, you need that volume first. You need a tool when you need a tool. And until then, actually, as you say, like the founder will be responding to everything initially, which is the best place to start, because the founder needs to be the spearhead of the business. So it's all very well, getting people in to work for you, but I've always lived by the rule of, I'll get people to come and work for me that can do things that are already happening, rather than inviting somebody in just to start something completely from scratch. We'll start it, get somebody in, and start scaling it up from there. And so I think with customer service or social, it's difficult and I've seen brands do this, you just hire, the Josephine or Dave, the 19-year-old who's just out of college, right? Sit in the corner, you do all the digitally things and make us millions of pounds. And it just doesn't work. That's not properly investing in the process.
Exactly. Yeah. Because that person, Dave or Josephine as well, like they're not going to have the full insight and understanding of the brand and the product that the founder does. So, in those early stages, like I think absolutely, like make it so that there is one person, particularly high up in the company, if not the founder, that understands very well like what the most common inquiries are, what some of the obstacles they're facing in recognizing this brand and this product as a community on all of these social platforms. And once we have like a baseline established, then you can bring in Dave and Josephine and a tool like Gorgias to say like, okay, now that we have a good understanding of like what the common stuff is that we're seeing, now we have a good understanding of the standard operating procedures that we could follow to build it up bigger, to get more brand recognition, to make more sales, and to just provide top tier customer service.
Definitely no. And I think I think getting that whole process started, and then Dave and Josephine, in you come.
Exactly.
Crack on from here. But I think the other key thing, the only thing I would add to what you just said, I agree with everything you've just mentioned, but the only thing I would add is, in those early days when you are the founder, for your own sanity, just get a spreadsheet. I love a good spreadsheet, and color code it, do whatever you want, but get a spreadsheet and document, not word for word, but just generally, someone's asked about this, and this is my general response. And then if you decide that actually, when people ask about returns, there's 3 different responses I send, we'll write all 3 in your spreadsheet. Because then when these questions come in, you can actually copy and paste the same thing, or you're essentially lowering the time required to respond when you're doing it manually. And you're also lowering the brain capacity required to think about what you're doing because you've got a million other things going on. So responding to someone that just said like, oh, my return took 4 days instead of 3 to come back, or, to be able to say, oh, really, really sorry for that. We've had a slight delay, but we've got it now. We'll make sure that gets sorted today. Case closed. Having that written down, ready to go is so important. And then when you do start to expand your team or use a tool like Gorgias, you've actually got the copy and the content for your help center, your FAQs that go on the website, which we spoke about earlier. Plus, you've already got some of the content and copy ready to go into a tool that you might start using. Or if you're pre-tool still, you might give to somebody else to say, when someone asks about returns, we always make a point of mentioning this, because that works for our customers. We tested it. The founder wrote it initially. We always talk about that. And then somebody can come in and start evolving and testing and developing that process. But it gives them something to work with when they first arrive.
Exactly. And I love that idea of kind of going like old school with the spreadsheet. I love a good spreadsheet myself. And I think it's insanely valuable because like we do obviously have sales conversations with brands all the time that don't use a help desk or aren't using a tool like Gorgias. And when we ask that question, like what are some of the most common support tickets that you see? Like it's not like there's any real substantiated data there, right? It's very subjective answers that we typically get, like, oh, where is my order, right? Like, yeah, everyone gets that, but we don't actually have an understanding of like the percentages of which these are coming in, the rate at which they're coming in. And so oftentimes what we end up seeing and what ends up happening, I have an implementation partner that I work with that actually does a very similar thing within Gorgias. So when they're identifying like what should the standard operating procedures be, they essentially export all the tickets from Gorgias into a spreadsheet and identify the common things that they're seeing, and they can have a very itemized list of like how often certain inquiries are coming up, and then like you said, building up that standard operating procedure. So when you are in those early stages, like there's so much value in having that established and having those templated responses ready to go even at an early stage. And you could even take it a step further where like if you are somewhat kind of managing this from your cell phone, like you can add templates into like keyboard shortcuts right there within your iPhone, and that's an easy way to respond just like on a wider scale to all of these inquiries that are coming in. You identify 3 of the top most common things that people are asking, you build up a couple templates within your phone, and then boom, you can respond very quickly before you're at that scale where you need a help desk to help automate this, and potentially bringing in some new hires to help take some of that workload off. So yeah, even at the early stages, like there's things you can do to provide yourself with those level of automations and just really those quality of life improvements that is going to make your job so much easier in building that community and providing top tier customer support even before you're a massive multi-million-dollar brand.
Definitely. Work smarter, not harder. That's one of my catchphrases. So yeah, if you can work smarter without having to work as hard, then absolutely box ticked. Now, possibly our final point, we might come on to one other thing afterwards, but customer service, I mean, it can get so expensive, can't it? I mean, there's so many costs and what I sometimes call cost pressures and pressure from cost put on the business. You're buying your products in, you're paying for marketing. Shopify might seem cheap on day one. It's not so cheap when you've got 20,000 orders a day going out because of transaction costs. And then you need developers and staff and the rest of it. And then suddenly there's this kind of other bit of like, oh my gosh, and we need to pay to offer free returns. We need to talk to the customer to organize it all just gets very, very expensive. So I mentioned earlier about the commercial side of customer service. Like, could you turn what might feel like lots of negativity towards your business and returning things, product arrived broken, I hate your business, please give me a refund, right the way through those kind of things. You get all of that and it can feel really negative and it can feel really expensive to deal with it. And you're sitting there going, oh, now we need to make more sales to cover the cost of all this customer service and the tools required, etc., which then adds even more pressure because then you've got more customers coming in, and naturally, if you do have a problem with your delivery courier, you're going to keep getting delivery problems. How, therefore, can we turn this customer engagement that might seem negative and start negative? How can we turn it on its head and start making a profit from it? How can we generate more sales? And you mentioned earlier about lifetime value. How can brands really start to focus on that to deliver actual revenue from what might seem like a long list of complaints and refunds?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, Nick. And I think fortunately, Gorgias is built on a few key pillars of customer service, and one of those being efficiency. And I think that should be the place to start, right? If we're looking at like, oh my gosh, how expensive can this be? Like, we need to start by building the most efficient process possible. So that standard operating procedures, standard responses that we are bringing to the table when people do come at us with that, I hate your brand, I never want to buy from you again. Like, we need to have processes in place to make that feel like not the world ending event, because it's not, right? Essentially, we can earn that customer back. They're probably upset about, some minor issue that we can resolve, whether that's in the way of just, issuing a refund and then we don't have to deal with that customer again, or issuing a refund, inquiring further, right? Like, what went wrong? Like, what can we do to help? Offering a discount code. And that brings us to another pillar of Gorgias, which is turning customer service into a revenue generation channel. And I think that's where the value really comes into play, right? Like, efficiency is one aspect to it that helps drive down the costs associated with, responding to these negative inquiries when they come in. But another, really important part of what we're doing here is we're trying to provide a way to engage with customers that drives sales. So that can be a number of ways, right? That can be on social media channels. We have a way to identify social leads effectively. So if we are running, a sponsored post on Instagram, and people say like, "Oh, this looks so awesome. Like, how much does it cost?" Then we can build out workflows to reach out to that customer directly, DM them, "Hey, it costs $70, but I want to offer you a 20% off coupon code because you're so excited about it and because you engaged with the brand." Boom. Now that we got a customer that is excited, they are really happy to have engaged with the brand. They're probably going to do it again for some more positive publicity. And that's one way that we can turn it into like a revenue generation channel. Now, beyond that, there's other, instances pretty much like built into the website, right? Like, people talk about chat all the time as a way to increase conversion and bring in more sales. And that's another thing that you absolutely can do within Gorgias, right? If somebody's spending a little bit of time on a page buying a t-shirt, and then boom, we have a chat bot that pops up and says like, "Would you like to get these shoes? Here's a coupon code for the shoes. They match the shirt really well. What's your size? Add to cart here." Like, all of those ways between, self-service, automated responses, and really strategies around how we're addressing these negative inquiries really just help turn this, essentially painful channel that, like, it feels like it's just a pain in the butt to deal with, into a way to generate revenue for the business and really keep costs down on the side of service, labor, and just, general refunding, shipping costs, things like that. If we make that process as efficient as possible, and then we also look at how efficient that process is and how we can convert that into a revenue generator for companies, that's where we're kind of at that golden standard of customer service. And again, that's really what Gorgias is all about providing.
Amazing. And I love the fact you're talking about, sort of if you're looking at, it's classic with clothing, isn't it? You're looking at this t-shirt, would you like these trainers? I think equally just having a chatbot that pops up saying, "Would you like some help? Would you like to see this season's trends?" And the chatbot could actually even say, "You're currently looking at this product. These are the products that are most bought with that by using Shopify data." It just starts to become almost like a personal shopping experience with a robot.
Exactly.
Which is just amazing. I think it's such a better way of doing things. Now, you mentioned discount codes and coupons quite a lot. You don't have to discount, do you? I mean,
No.
it's the quickest and easy way to upsell something, increase, basket value, average order value, etc. But you don't just have to go down the discounting route. There are lots of other options.
Yeah, not at all. And I think, there's really, limitless options there, is like how you want to approach this. Like, if somebody does reach out and ask like, how much does this cost? Then you could just, directly respond, "Here it is," through the website, click this link to check out. I actually saw, and I think a good example of this, of like how to handle, those questions around cost, or like maybe even concerns around cost. I just saw this earlier this week where there was a product on TikTok. It was some sort of like electronic product. And I immediately went to the comments because I was curious, like, how much does it cost? And, people had already researched it for me, posted in the comments. And some people were like, $80, I'm not sold. That's too much. I don't want to spend
Nice.
that much on this. And the brand was doing a great job at responding and not offering a coupon code. And the tactic that they had, and this is just one idea, something that you could do. The tactic that they had was to respond to everyone saying like, "Hey, it's definitely worth the cost. Our reviews speak for themselves. But if it's too much for you, we're doing a giveaway next month. Make sure to follow and stay tuned to really keep up with the giveaway that's going to be coming out." And that's just such a great option, right? Rather than offering a coupon code, or, responding to everybody that's asking for free product, like, this is a way to build the following and get more brand recognition, right? Because for whatever terms and conditions you're going to have for that giveaway, it's probably going to involve some way of like cross posting your posts, or just your brand, or sharing with some friends. Like, all of those are, effective ways to really respond to that inquiry, around cost without offering a coupon code and building up the brand following at the same time. So, I mean, there's multiple things that you could do there, whether it's just going to be direct about price, to offer a discount code, to do a giveaway like that. And I think there's probably a million other ideas that, haven't been had yet and that are kind of out there in the ether. Really, it's about identifying, internally, like what is going to be the best solution to respond to, some of these issues and problems that come up, and make sure that we're getting more sales, whether that's going to be, a giveaway or like some sort of offering, whether that's additional product. Like there's always ways that we can convert these incoming tickets into more sales, essentially.
Amazing. And it's something I saw the other day, just a quick footnote, a quick tip, is when somebody organizes a return, we had, I think it was Tentree, who we had on, must have been last year now. I think it's part of the Yotpo series we did. And Tentree came on and said, we don't believe in customer returns and refunds. We believe in customer exchanges. And they would actually offer a 10% off an upgrade. If you said, okay, I don't want this t-shirt and it costs $20, they would then say, well, look, if you want this t-shirt instead, we'll refund you $2, give you 10% back, and here's the other t-shirt. I can't remember if that was the exact way Tentree did it, but they just absolutely believe that if somebody wanted to return something, they would absolutely make that return super simple, but they would try to understand why they want to return it as quickly as possible without draining lots of the customer time, or to make it feel like to the customer that they just weren't actually going to return it, or they didn't want to, or they just want to keep the cash kind of thing. They did it in a really friendly way. And I think they also had an option where you could actually just earn loyalty points with Yotpo instead of, I don't want to plug Yotpo too much. We finished that series, but there was a whole, you can have loyalty points instead of a refund.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I had it with a holiday a while ago. We cancelled the holiday because of COVID, and they said we can either give you a direct refund or we'll bump it up by nearly 20% if you want to keep credit on our system, which means they get to keep the cash. But it now means instead of £500 to go on a holiday, I've now got 600, and it's sitting there ready to use. And every now and then I remember it and think, well, let's have a look at what holidays they've got. And so again, it's another way you can keep the sale, either exchanging the products or by offering something that means they're actually going to come and spend that money later on. It's almost just a case that you're kind of sitting on it as credit, which is nice. So again, good customer service can actually make you a lot of money or stop you from losing money that inevitably you would have lost in the first place. Loads to learn on, I think. Last question, Tyler. Gorgias sounds really expensive because, I mean, it could replace a human, which could be thousands of pounds or dollars a month. Mm-hmm. It could replace a whole team of people, which could be tens of thousands, possibly hundreds of thousands. But that's not how much Gorgias costs, is it? I've just had a quick look on your pricing page. Where does the pricing start for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, it's super reasonable and very transparent within our website. It starts at just $60 a month. So when you're looking at the cost of replacing essentially a whole team of customer service reps for $60 a month, I think that cost speaks for itself. There's some key differentiators in our pricing versus some other help desk competitors that are out there, primarily being that you don't pay per seat because the tool is so efficient. What we want to do is really itemize the tickets. And so it's a per ticket pricing. And it's not a matter of like, okay, I'm on the $60 a month lowest ticket plan. Once I hit, 350 tickets or however many is included, the software turns off. That's not the way that it operates at all. It's just like a small additional fee if you do exceed that. If you have a big month, or maybe you ran like a ton of social media advertisements and opened up a bunch of tickets that way, like the cost, looking at the alternatives that are out there of other help desks and just scaling the internal CS teams, I think really speaks for itself. And I think, if you're considering upping your CS game and really wanting to provide that top tier of service across all your social channels and, through email, through chat, all of these support options, like I can't recommend enough that you take a look at Gorgias. At the very least, take a trial for a week. And I would be really, really surprised to see that you give it a shot for a week and that you don't want to continue using it, because it's just that effective and that efficient.
Just so everyone's clear, Tyler works for Gorgias and he's paid to say that. I'm not, and I'll say it is definitely worth a shot. So please do go and check it out. Just to put that cost in relation, if you stop a couple of returns per month using Gorgias' software that would have been returns and refunds, it's paid for itself. If you can upsell a few new products or find some new customers via social using the tool, it's definitely paid for itself. So it's a bit of a loss lead to not give it a go. So yeah, go and check it out. Go and check it out on the website. We'll link to it in the description of the podcast as well. Tyler, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Nick. This has been so fun.
Cool. And for everybody else listening, we'll be back again next week. We post every single Friday. And next week as well, we have an amazing guest. I'm just looking on the schedule that Byron's put in front of me, and they're not confirmed, so I'm not going to mention their name until they are. But we will be back next week. We've got a few other options if those guys aren't available. So thanks so much for listening. Back again next week, and we hope you're all staying safe.
Thanks for listening to today's podcast. You can subscribe to our weekly newsletter for exclusive offers at winningwithshopify.com. And don't forget to check out our Facebook group by searching for Winning with Shopify on Facebook. Over and out.